precious babysitter got married a few years ago and she's having a baby now, which means I get to sew for her. First things first, we have to make her a baby quilt. So let's make a quilt today for McKinlee Ruth. Our babysitter's name is also Chelsea. Clearly, everyone named Chelsea is just super great. I asked her what color the nursery is going to be, and she said it's going to be pinks and greens with some grays and golds. And I was like, I can totally work with that. I found this 12 fat quarter bundle on Amazon, and I don't know if I'll use all of these today, but I thought they were just super pretty and had lots of fun colors and greens and pinks and flowers. And then I'm going to use this really light gray color for the accents. And I have sawtooth stars on the brain, so I may just make this an entire quilt out of sawtooth stars. I really have zero plan for this. As you know, I don't tend to plan things in advance. So I'm going to show you a sawtooth star and then we'll go from there. I may put a little embroidery on this. I have no idea. Let me start by showing you how to do one sawtooth star and then we'll go from there. If you see that I have changed outfits, it's because the footage I took yesterday of explaining this, I feel like was not clear enough. So we're going to do it again and until we get it right, because that's how I teach. So you'll see me change outfits in this video. It is what it is. Mind your business. Okay. So the best way to explain this, because it can be confusing, especially if you're wanting to alternate your colors. So let's say you want, and I have some here I can show you. Let's say you want some of your squares to have the gray as the star, and then you want some of your other squares to have the floral as the star. Okay. So I'm going to show you on this paper and write out what you need so you can screenshot it, and hopefully that'll help clarify what you're cutting and why. So you're essentially going to be doing this. You want to screenshot that. Okay, these are our measurements and I'm going to write them out here for you. So for your background fabric, which is like this area here, you're going to need to cut 4 3 by 3 inch squares and 1 6.5 by 6.5 inch square. The reason we do that is because we're going to do some flying geese with this, and the flying geese, the part with the background is your gray here in this circumstance, and that's what's going to be 6.5 inches because we'll cut that down. Okay, so that is your background measurement, your background cuts. Your star cuts, you're going to need 1 5.5 by 5.5 inch square. And for your star points, you're going to need 4 3 5/8 by 3 5/8 inch squares. And you may be thinking, well, 5/8 is like almost a half. Does it really matter? Yes, it does. Because if you think about it, that's 1/8 of an inch difference that will be on every square multiple times in your project, which means you're going to be missing whatever that is times 1/8, which could end up being quite a bit of square footage. So definitely pay attention to your cutting measurements for this. 3 5/8 is what you need. So let's cut this fabric and then I'll show you how to sew it together, probably in my other outfit because I did that fine. I just felt like we needed some more clarification. So here is this if you want to screenshot it. I'm not sure how helpful that is. Here, you can put my face in it too. Okay, let's cut some fabric. So according to our chart for our background, let's say for this square, we're going to make the gray background. So it'll look like this one with the pretty bright fabric in the middle. And you can do these however you want. You don't have to alternate them. You can do literally anything. So let's start with our background, which in this case will be the gray. We are going to need 1 6.5 by 6.5 inch square. And if you hear birds chirping, it's because my window is open because it's giving me life right now. I have been so wishing for warm weather and we have had such yucky cold weather the last few days. So I'm soaking it in and so are you. All right. So this is my 6.5 inch square grid. And this is perfect because it'll give me a perfect 6.5 inch square. Easy peasy. Now we need 4 3 by 3 inch squares. Got some, I'll save those for later. I have a couple strips of fabric that I've cut and pressed already, so we'll use that. And I'm not sure if we have enough here to get, I think we do. Oh yeah, perfect. So I'm going to double this up And first of all, just trim it here. Give me a smaller piece to work with. And for this one, if you have a 3x18 ruler, you'll eventually have every size of ruler if you decide to start quilting, because you just are like, well, it'd be easier if I had that for this project, and then you'll buy one. Then you'll be glad you did. So I'm going to cut both sides here to get my 3 inches. Oh, my birds are chirping. They're very happy this morning. They're grateful for the springtime weather. And then I'll do another 3-inch cut. So now I've got 2 of those squares. Make them in a little pile so you know where all your stuff is. Great. And now it's time to cut our star fabric, which I'm going to use this pretty green for. I've got a ton of these beautiful fat quarters, and I think there's 12 in the mix. So we'll see I might make this 12 squares big. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to just keep cutting and making squares until I feel like I've done enough. So the first cut I'm going to make is at that 3. And well, first of all, I'm going to even up. See if this side's a little straighter. That side is not very straight. That's not straight enough to my liking either. So I'm going to square this up first and make sure that we're cutting evenly. Gorgeous. And just to make it a little easier to work with, I'm going to fold it. Now, we're going to go over 3 5/8 inches. That is 1 notch over from your 1/2 inch mark on your cutting mat. And yes, it matters. I know it sounds crazy, but it does matter. So cut that one up. Trim off my folded edge here. And cut over another 3 5/8 inches. 1, 2, 3 5/8. Right on that little tiny notch beside the 1/2 inch mark. Lovely. 1 more of those. All right. And then the last thing we need for our star is a 5 1/2 inch square of the pretty green fabric. Let's go back over here. This is my squared up edge. Whoops. One of my pieces just fell back behind I'll have to crawl down there and get it here in a second. And since this is a 6 1/2 inch ruler, I'm just going to slide it down 1 inch. And before I cut, I'm just going to count over and double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 1/2. Perfect. We'll cut that 5 1/2 inch square. And that's all the cutting we need to do for this. Now, again, if you're going to alternate your colors, you'll just next time do your background with the floral and your star with the gray. Totally easy to switch in and out. You just have to pay attention a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go fish out this one that fell behind my cutting mat, and then I'll show you how to sew these together. All right, my little love doves, take your 4 floral pieces or whatever your star pieces are for this version, and pull those out, and then pull your 6 1/2 inch square out and put the rest of this away for just a few minutes. And we're going to take those floral pieces, flip them face down, and I'm going to draw a diagonal line clear across from diagonal to diagonal on each and every one of those. This is going to give me a guideline for our next step, because we're going to sew on either side of this line, not on the line, which I think is a little confusing for new quilters, but you'll understand why here in just a sec. It's kind of magical. Okay, take 2 of those and your 6 1/2 inch square, and I want you to lay the first one coming straight out from the top diagonal with your raw edges all lined up, and then take your second one, layer that on top, and make those lines match up so it makes one nice long straight line. We can pin this in place. You don't need a ton of pins, just a couple to keep things straight. And let's take this to the sewing machine. I am using regular white polyester thread and universal 80-12 needle, and my stitch length is set to a 2.5 with my needle left justified so that I have a true 1/4 inch measurement, but you don't have to do it this way. However you find your 1/4 inch is fine. I'm going to line my 1/4 inch line up with this line, and then I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch to the left of it. I've got this lined up nice and straight. I'm going to go ahead and start stitching, following that line. My eyes are on the blue line and where it is lining up with my presser foot, which is at that 1/4 inch mark. Just stitch all the way across. When you get to the end, cut your thread, turn it, and now you're going to stitch on the opposite line, opposite side of that line, 1/4 inch away. This is how we create our flying geese, which are the middle parts of the outside of our square. That'll make sense here in a second. All right, cut that thread. Grab your rotary cutter and your ruler. Oh, you can go ahead and take these pins out now. Lay your ruler down along the line and just trim it straight up. When you flip these up, it kind of looks like a heart. Now, if you want to take these over to your ironing board and press them, that's fine. I'm just going to finger press mine in place, which means I'm just going to press down on that sewn line. And I'm going to grab another one of these florals with the line on the back and lay it down right in the center here so that my line is now coming from this area to the middle. Lay this back under your machine, and those 1/4 inch lines that we just did, we're going to do that again. Right next to that line is where we're going to sew. And don't push or pull the fabric on this step. Let your feed dogs and your presser foot do the work, because it will mess up your measurements. Cut the thread, turn the work, and stitch on the other side here. Again, just letting your machine do the work. You're not pushing or pulling that fabric. I'm barely even touching it. Trim up that line again. And now you'll see when you unfold that you have a gorgeous flying geese, goose, gosling, whatever it is. Repeat this on your other one, and then I'll show you how to press them and trim them up. This is what you should have. You should have 4 of these. And you're just going to lay this down and press out those seams. I like to hit it from the back and then flip it over and just press it from the front and make sure it's good and crispy. Repeat that on all 4. This is kind of my least favorite part of making quilt blocks, is squaring them up to the correct sizes. I just don't love it. Anyway, it is part of the process. So we want these to be 3 inches tall by 5.5 inches wide. And they're probably right now pretty close to that, but close is not enough. It needs to be right on the dot or it will mess up your quilt down the road. So I'm going to line this up, and looks like I need to trim just a wisp off the side. And that's really all you should be taking off if your measurements are right. Get this over here, 5.5 inches. Trim off a wisp, and then we've got our 3 inch. Take some of this off. Good and perfect. That is just about beautiful. Look at that pretty block. Okay, do that on your other ones. We're ready to lay this quilt block out. I mean, this is so easy, right? Lay your center here, and then put your star points going all around. Ooh, that's pretty and botanical. And then put your squares in the corners. I love it. All right, let me show you how to sew this together. For this type of piecing, I like to put on my 1/4 inch quilt foot with guide. It's got that little bar there on the side that if you line up this needle in the center and you push it up against the bar, you cannot mess up that 1/4 inch seam. It really is magical. If you don't have that, it's okay. You've already been looking at your 1/4 inch seam all this time, so you can just keep doing that. To do this, I'm going to chain piece it, and that means I'm going to take my middle row and flip it left and sew right here. And we'll get to this row in a second. So grab your first 2 pieces, line up your raw edges, and we're just going to sew a nice 1/4 inch seam right there. When you get to the bottom of that piece, just stop sewing and pick up your next piece. Line up those raw edges and let that run under your presser foot now. You're not cutting the thread or lifting your presser foot. This helps keep things in order, and it also makes the piecing go quite a bit faster. Okay, grab those last 2, run them under. Cut the thread. I typically just slide this down towards me, open up that right there, and add my block onto the end now. in the same order we did it the first time. Look at you sewing quilt blocks. The Sawtooth Star especially is just a classic look, and it is so beautiful in a quilt. Whatever colors you decide to make it, it just always looks pretty. And this really isn't that hard, is it? I mean, I think a lot of times as beginners, we just think, well, there's no way I could make that. It's so intricate, but it's really not as hard as it looks. And that's what makes it awesome. Okay, last one. Lay this guy right on top. Sew it through. Cut your thread. And now you're going to have this kind of spider webby looking thing. A little strange, but lay it down. And you can either trim these or just leave them as is. And we're just going to flip the top row down and sew along this seam. And we're going to nest our seams as we go. And that means that when I come up to this seam, I'm going to put one going up and one going down. And you can feel with your fingers when it's flat and nice and lined up. Okay, that's just a really good little tip, is to feel it in between the fabrics and make sure you feel that they're lined up together. That'll help you get a really nice crispy seam. So straight across. And as I approach that other one, I'm going to stop. Make sure everything is lined up nicely. Yep, I feel it flat with my finger. That's perfect. And keep going. Gorgeous. Cut it. Pull it out. Ooh, that's pretty. And then flip this bottom piece up and repeat that nesting situation on this side. Once you get in a groove too, these really don't take that long to put together. And for a baby quilt, you don't need too many. Not sure how many I need yet. I'll keep you posted on that information, but I don't know that we'll need too many because these are 10 inches when sewn into the quilt. Maybe 4, so maybe 16 total. I don't know. Okay. Look at that. That is so pretty. Let's go press this. Just going to press those seams down on the sides here. You can use a little bit of your quilting and crafting spray if you want to help get everything nice and flat. They also make all different types of that spray. Flatter spray, best press, all kinds of stuff. You just find the one that makes you happiest. And then turn it. And I like to also just press it from the front. Now I've got my steam on. A lot of people don't use steam when they're quilting because if you get any sort of hard water coming out of there or yucky, rusty water, then it'll ruin your quilt square. But I'm willing to take the risk. You don't have to. I keep my iron pretty clean. Okay, that is gorgeous. Let's go check and see where we fall on the measurement grid. Hopefully this will end up around 10.5 inches. That's the goal. Let's see where we land. Yeah, we're right at 10.5. So that's great. So that is the star if you have your colors in the middle. So easy, right? You can totally do this. Let's lay this new type of star out and see what we think. So the star points on this one are going to be in the gray, and then all of our beautiful rose fabric will be hanging out in the background. Well, I like that too. This is so cute. That nice big rose right in the middle. I think I am going to alternate them on this project. I love that. All right, I'm going to sew this together, trim it up, and I'll show you the two side by side. Okay, here's our 2 quilt blocks. I love it. It's so just soft and beautiful. I think that's really going to look beautiful together. And I'm trying to decide, I may do some sashing in between or maybe not. And I think I'm going to shoot for 12 blocks, which would be, 3 by 4. 3 by 3, maybe 9 blocks. No, that's not big enough. I'll let you know how many blocks. Luckily, you'll find out in the next few seconds. It'll take me a little while to decide. I'm just going to keep making blocks until I decide that's enough blocks. So I'll meet you back here once I have all my blocks and I'll show you how to sew the quilt together. Quick update. I've got 9 squares made, and this is about 30 inches by 30 inches if we sewed it right now. I don't want to do a whole nother surrounding thing of squares because I feel like that would be too big. So what I decided is I'm going to add some sashing. This is a really light pink. And I'm going to put sashing between these rows here. And then I'll do right there. So these are 3-inch strips, which will add a good amount to the quilt to make it bigger, but not too big. So let me show you the sashing that I'm cutting here. So I've got a 3-inch strip and I'm going to measure it like around 11 inches. My quilt blocks are 10.5, but I'd rather it be a little bit too long and I trim it down than to not have enough. So I need 6 of those, and then I'll need 2 3-inch by much longer strips. So I just did that by the width of the fabric, and then I'll trim that down as needed. So remember, my approach of just sort of having a free sew and sort of making up the quilt pattern as I go is fun. But if it's not for you, that's okay. So don't feel bad if this does not appeal to you whatsoever. For me, it feels very freeing of just like, hey, let's choose our own adventure and do what naturally comes next. The sashing felt like the right move. I will put all of this information. Obviously, this tutorial will be helpful for you if you want to replicate this. I have no idea how this is going to look at the end. I think it's going to be pretty. I did feel like it needed more pink, so that's why I did this kind of light pink sashing. And it's also going to have pink minky on the back, so we'll have some pink there as well. All right, let me show you how to attach this between your squares, and then I'll show you how to sew it along all of your connected squares. This is my top row, and I brought it over to my sewing table, and what we're going to do is place sashing between these squares. Let me show you how to attach it. I've still got that 1/4-inch quilt foot width guide, and all I'm going to do is fold this over on top of my first sashing piece, and it's going to be bigger than my square, and I did that on purpose. I just wanted to be able to have some space if we needed it. So line it up with your raw edge and just start sewing. Following that 1/4-inch seam. So this will essentially add about 2.5 inches per section. So another 5 inches to my quilt, which will put me up at around like 35 by 35, which I think is a good size for an infant quilt. All right, so there's our sashing. And now I'm just going to grab the next piece over and lay that on top. I'm just working from left to right here. Super easy. And I'm just going to repeat this on all of my rows until every horizontal row has sashing between the blocks. From there, I'll show you what to do next. Please just punch with how this is coming along. Now, remember, we made these sashing pieces a little bit longer than they needed to be. And I did that on purpose because you might need some of that wiggle room, okay? If your measurements are spot on, you may not. So we're just going to trim off in those little spots where we have some extra fabric hanging around. And then we're going to attach all of our rows together. This is a fantastic add-on to any quilt to put a little sashing in there for a few reasons. The first reason it's helpful for beginners is you don't have to do as much seam matching when you add sashing. If you hadn't put sashing, then you'd be trying to connect all of these little seams here, and that might be overwhelming if you're just starting out. So this makes that a lot easier. Now, we've got everything pressed. This is our bottom row, and I'm going to go ahead and this is by the width of fabric, so it's like approximately 44-ish inches right now. I'm going to trim it. I'm going to lay it right here. You see how long it ends up being. My window's open. I can't help it, y'all. I'm not closing it. It's too beautiful outside. If I could sew on you know what? That might be what I do next. I may do a tutorial outside because I just love being outside and the fresh air. So this is essentially what we're doing here, except this is our bottom row, so we'll do it to the top. But anyway, my point is the long piece needs to be 10, 20, 35 inches. Yeah, so our quilt is now going to be 35 by 35 inches, which is a very good size for a baby quilt. Now, I'm not even going to trim this right now because who knows? Maybe I will do something silly and it'll come up a little short. That way I have extra fabric. If you can leave fabric and it not mess up your measurements, I would leave it. So I'm going to line this up. This is the top of my bottom row. We're just going to sew right here. Yes, I think this will be a super cute quilt. Line it up with that 1/4 inch. And you're adding a little bit more square footage to the quilt, but you're also adding visual interest. I saw a problem. I noticed that I did not have enough pink that would make me feel good about giving this quilt. Just my own personal opinion. But my solution was not to change the entire quilt around or go buy more fabric. I just dug through my stash, found something. It was just a scrap that ended up being exactly the amount of fabric I needed to put some sashing in. And now it's going to be even more beautiful. And it'll include more of that pink color, which is what little McKinlee's nursery is going to have in it. My allergies are kicking up today. You can hear it in my voice. My goodness. I took Mucinex and Zyrtec. I'm just taking all of the things. All right, keep sewing until you get to the end of this row, and then I'll show you what to do next. You're doing awesome. Okay, we're at the end of this row. Everything is attached. So I'm just going to trim up the side here. That wind. All right, now let's add our middle row. So I'm going to fold this up. I'm not going to iron it yet because, I mean, you can, but I'm not going to because we can iron it in a minute. So lay it out the way that you want it to look and then flip this up onto it. And sew this line just like you did before. Repeat that for this row and then do the same thing with your top row. Okay? You got this. Look at this. Ah, that is so sweet. I just think it's so cute. And I don't know if you saw this, but I did ended up embroidering her name on here. I used my Baby Lock Aurora. It is a very beginner entry level embroidery machine. I don't do a ton of embroidery, but it does have a 4x4, I think, inch space for your embroidery projects. And that works perfectly fine for me. I don't know if is it 4x4? Like around 4 or 5 inches for the space for your embroidery. And I just think that metallic thread is going to look so cute. Very soft colors on this project, which is, you know, not super like me, but I think it's really cute. So now it's time to quilt the quilt. We're going to get some batting and some backing here. And you don't need a ton of it because this thing is only 35 inches squared. But I think this will be a perfect size for putting in the car seat, playing on the floor, what have you. And I'm not going to do sashing or a border on the outside. I'm just going to use some more of that pink or maybe a different color. I don't know. I may bind it with something different. Again, this is just sewing with your feelings. We're sewing with our feelings today. So let me show you. This is the minky that I'm going to be using. We may be able to get away maybe with just the 1 yard of it. So soft, so snuggly. It looks like I'm going to have just enough of 1 yard of this that it will have like about 2 inches hanging on either end, which is fine. That'll work great. So I'm going to just use 1 yard of this beautiful pink minky fabric. This is linked down below in the description. It's available on Amazon. And I'm just going to lay this as flat as I can get it. Have some hanging off the end of my table here. And I just had a scrap of batting laying around because this is such a small quilt. This is a great opportunity to use up those leftover pieces of batting that you have just chilling in your sewing room. This is ideal for that. So I'm going to lay that on top. I may have to close my window finally. The wind is howling. It's blowing my pieces everywhere. Keep it as straight as you can. I pull my table a little bit out from the wall for this so that it can just drape down the back. You do this wherever makes sense for you. If that's the floor, if that's on your island in your kitchen, wherever. And then last, I'm going to take my quilt top, which is freshly pressed. Everything is nice and starchy and flat, and lay that on top. Now, ideally, it'd be nice to have a little extra wiggle room on the sides here, but again, we're just using up scraps, and I'm going to make it work. Move it up just a little bit because we have some of the room. And just to be sure, I'm going to pull it down to make sure we Yep, we clear everything. So I'm not worried about that section of my quilt right now, but I do want to just double check that everything's going to fit nicely. Cool. Now, you could use safety pins, you can use basting spray, you could use a combination of both. The basting spray is really nice because let's say you want to just do right in this section. Just spray it, fold it down, flatten it out. And then you can actually flip this up and spray it again. That's the quickest way. Some people don't love basting spray, and that's okay. You're your own person, and you can make those decisions all by yourself. Gorgeous. Now that we've got this, on the basting spray track, that's what I'm going to continue doing. So fold it down right about here, flatten everything out. Now you can lay like an old sheet down or something if you don't want to take the risk of getting basting spray on your sewing table or your cutting mat. That's fine. I like to live dangerously, as you all well know by now. Oh, just love this. How adorable. And then one more spritz. And then I'm going to also do the back side. So just keep basting it however you want. That's safety pins or basting spray. And then I will meet you back here and I'll show you how to quilt the quilt. We're almost done. This is fun. Now that everything is basted and stuck together, I am going to trim off this top area because I don't need to be trying to wrestle this along with the rest of my stuff. So I'm just going to cut maybe 5 inches above the top of my quilt. And that's something I can use for another project now. Maybe I can make her a little matching lovey or something. Oh, just a good idea. It just popped in my head. Now we're back to what we have to work with here. So I'm going to, let's see, how do we want to quilt this? I don't really want to quilt over her name. So I'm going to keep that in mind with whatever I choose. Let me think on it. I'll be back. I had a little conversation with myself about how I want to quilt this. And I tested out a few things on my test fabric. So one way to just practice is to create a version of, with your scraps, of what you're going to be actually sewing. So don't practice your stitches on just like a plain piece of quilting cotton if you're going to be actually quilting it on a quilt that has batting and backing. Replicate that as best you can. So I did backing with a little bit of batting and some scrap fabric. I tried a little free motion. I wasn't feeling it. And then I went over to my serpentine stitch, which is on my brother. It's number 30 in group number 3. And it is a wavy stitch that automatically waves for you. So in the past, I've showed you the meandering wavy stitch, which is where we change the direction of the fabric. This one would be almost like doing straight line quilting, only it's going to give you a really pretty little wave. And I think that's what I'm going to go with. I've got just really light pink thread on my machine that I think will match well, and I'm going to use my walking foot. So let me show you how to create some of these stitches, and I'm going to do my best to avoid her name so that we don't stitch right through it because I feel like that might look weird. So, okay, let's get started. I'm going to put on my quilting gloves. I think I need to replace my quilting gloves soon because they're getting holes in the ends. But I love this pair, and I use them all the time. I guess it's time. Look, see, I've got holes in my fingers. All right, I've got my serpentine stitch loaded. I've upped the wave depth to as high as it'll go on my machine. My stitch length is at a 3.5, which is how long my stitches will be in the waves, okay? I've got my quilt rolled in from both the right and left edges so that I'll be starting in the middle, but I'm not gonna start near her name because I wanna establish kind of what I'm doing before I approach that. I think what I will end up doing is sewing maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches from each line before. So for this one, I'm going to start just a little bit above where her name would be, and we'll see what happens. On the very edge of your fabric, do one little back stitch and pull your fabric nice and taut. Now you don't have to change anything. You just have to let it go straight. And you're just going to let the machine do the work. So try your best to line your walking foot up with something on your quilt to keep those lines going straight, and then just let it go. This is a very beginner-friendly method of quilting something, but that adds some visual interest to the quilting, which is fun. And it goes pretty fast. So if you don't want to spend all day quilting, this is a good option. Okay, I'm stopping just right at the edge, and I'm going to backstitch and pull this out. Oh, that's sweet. Yes, I like that. This nice wavy line, I think that's going to look really pretty. Now, I think I'm going to do another line underneath the line. Yeah. And we'll go from there. Line it up on this side now. This is my, it attaches to my walking foot, and it helps me figure out where I am on my stitches. So I'm going to line it up with the middle of that wavy line. So we'll go back, do just one little back stitch at the very edge of the fabric. And sew. Oops, did I run out of thread? My bobbin ran out. All right, I'm gonna fill my bobbin. I'm just gonna keep sewing those little wavy stitches. These are so cute. I think that's gonna be adorable. And I'm gonna just space them out pretty evenly. I may just sew up to her square and then stop and then keep going. I'll let you know. Let me wind a bobbin and I'll check back in. Here's how I'm gonna manage this with her name. I've gotten to the seam of my square, and I'm going to backstitch, cut the thread, and then move it through so that I'm not stitching through her name. And then I'm going to backstitch and then pick back up with my stitch. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to think about it anymore. I just don't want to go through her name. I think it's so beautiful. So I think my plan of attack here is to do a center stitch and then one on either end of the square. So let's see how that looks. Oh yeah, I think that looks really nice. Can you, well, let me shine my light on it here. You can see pretty well how it ends and then it picks back up. And that's fine. If you want to go right through the name, that's also fine. It's your quilt. Do what you want. Okay, so I'm just going to keep quilting this down one side and then down the other. And I'll meet you back here and show you all the quilted lines, and then we'll do some binding and call this a day. I just finished quilting all of these beautiful wavy lines. I think it's 100% how this should have been quilted. Look how pretty that looks. Now it's time to square up our quilt, and we're going to sew the binding on and be all done. To square it up, I just usually take my rotary cutter and my acrylic ruler, and I'm going to line it up with the top edge or whichever side you're starting on, and carefully trim away any excess batting and backing that you don't need anymore. We want to get it right up to the edge of that quilt. Lovely. Turn it and continue on. Now, I'll tell you what, I have a full-length tutorial. I say this in all of my quilting videos. I have a full-length tutorial that is very in-depth about how to create binding, how to attach your binding, everything that has to do with binding. So I'm not going to touch on that in this video. I'm going to go ahead and bind the quilt, and then I'll show you the final reveal at the end. But if you want to follow that tutorial, it is in the description below. Something that's worth saving if you're new to sewing, just so you have it on hand, because binding, once you get the hang of it, is super easy. But when you're first starting out, it can feel a little overwhelming, and I don't ever want to gloss over that in these tutorials. That's why I made the dedicated video for it. So that's in the description. I'm going to keep squaring up my quilt, and then I'm going to bind it, and then I'm going to show it to you. I'll see you in just a little bit. I just finished binding our quilt from little Miss McKinlee Ruth. I can't wait to meet her. Chelsea, I hope you love this quilt, and I can't wait to celebrate this brand new baby with you. All right, are you guys ready to see it? It's so precious. Here we go. Isn't that sweet? Now, as you can see, I had to get a little fancy with it, and I went ahead and embroidered her name on there. If you're curious about how to do embroidery, I will drop a link in the description below that is a fully dedicated video on how I set up my Baby Lock Aurora for embroidery. It's a great little machine. And I am just pleased as punch with this quilt. I think it's the perfect size for an infant quilt. She can stash this in the car seat or let the baby lay on it for tummy time. And the colors go exactly with her nursery. So I'm really pleased with this. We backed it with Minky, so it's nice and soft for baby's skin. I love using Minky. You just need to remember to put that walking foot on, and Minky won't cause you a lick of trouble. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I'm Chelsea with She Sews Seams. Make sure to subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all of my upcoming content. I've got some really fun stuff coming up and you won't want to miss it. I'll see you next time.